Okay, team. So we're going to start the drawing stage, and I want you to grab your watercolor paper, a pencil, and we're going to start with the center of the daffodil. So this wants to be in the right place. This is basically going to set the position of your daffodil, and you want to draw a vague circle. It doesn't have to be perfect because it is a flower and it has some loads of bends in it. From there, we're going to try and draw the petals. So I'm going for this lovely shape on the back there, but then I want to make sure my petal is in the foreground. So you see how we have the lines coming from that oval for the right petal that I'm drawing now. And then that helps you to frame the petals that are setting backwards. So you're looking at where the petals start, where the lines curve, and where they end. So are the lines round? Do they have a slight dip in it? Do you have a slightly weirder petal than the other one? So make sure as you're going round, you're not just guessing and adding them on. You are trying to really look at the direction of the petal, the direction of lines, and the uniqueness of each one. And just make sure you have ones going in the background, which means that their lines aren't connected to that central oval. From here, I'm just going to refine the lines a little bit more. So the first stage is essentially, it's a bit like a rehearsal. And then when you go over the lines, I'm being a bit more confident and a bit more decisive about it. And I'm looking for those minor changes. So yes, we have the line direction, but then there might be a very subtle little dip or a subtle little change of direction. Or you might just notice that you were just a little bit more incorrect in the first round. So go over this again with your pencil and really look for those unique details and directions of the lines. The next stage is just to tidy up your lines because you've probably got a few outlines that are a little bit thick. So I use this amazing pencil rubber. It's really nice and thin and it can just get into the nitty gritty tiny bits without having to rub out too much. So tidy up your edges and then we're just going to add a little bit more detail in this central oval or central circle because there's a lot of tiny little folds in here and it doesn't have to be exact, but you do want to get the essence of the daffodil just slightly turning. So you'll see that we have some tight curves on the left and some less tight ones on the right. Now you can use the center of your petals to try and figure out where your curves start and stop because it does feel a bit ambiguous. So using the points of reference from the petal lines where they touch the circle and then using the center of the petals as well, and that should just help guide you to put your curvy central parts in the right places, and that will just help to show that it's curving and slightly twisted and facing over your left shoulder. So have a go at this bit, and again, tidy it up when you're done. Get rid of any lines that don't serve you, and make sure your lines aren't too thick or too dark either, because we don't want it to show hugely through the watercolors. Okay, and then we have the middle. So in the middle, you just want to add this vague shape. It's a bit ambiguous. I'm actually just going to do a little circle and then we're going to head down to the stem. So the stem is slightly off center. It's on the background leaf just to the right there. And then we're just going to go straight down. And from here, it's going to help us to do our leaves. So I'm going to start with the leaf that is closest to the petal on the left. And I can see the distance from the tip of the leaf to the petal. And I'm just going to draw that in. Again, this doesn't have to be perfect. Nature is all kinds of weird and wonderful shapes, but just try and get the essence of it and the proportions. Don't try and make them too big or too fat. Just make them thin and tall and long and make sure they're going in roughly the right direction. Once you've done this, your drawing is complete and we get to do the fun bit, which is the watercolor. But it is important to spend as much time as you can on the drawing and make sure you're happy with it because it does make your whole life a lot easier in the next stage. So hopefully you're happy with that and I will see you in the next lesson ready to paint. Okay, team. So our main point that we're going to start with today is just the block coloring. So I'm going to start with yellow. I'm not going to worry too much about detail because I'm just wanting to mark where the colors are and then we're going to go into detail after that. So I'm going to choose, well, my yellow has a little bit of green in it, so I'm just going to clean that first, and then let's just pop that. Yeah, there's a huge difference there. So yellow is a little bit too bright. I am actually going to add a tiny bit of orange just to dull the brightness down a little bit, but it still will be very bright. Now we don't want it to be too thick because then it's just going to be a thick blobby yellow. So we're going to add a little bit more water in the lid than you probably feel is natural. It might feel like it's too little, but I'd rather it be too thin than too thick. And all we're going to do is paint that straight on, spread it about as much as possible. And I always like to finish the petal before I move on if I need to pick up more paint, because if it does dry, at least it's drying on the end of something. Okay, so we don't want to stop halfway and then there'll be a harsh line down the middle. So let's pop that on there. There we go, and then I'll just pop that in the middle. So when it dries, it is going to dry lighter, which can be sometimes quite annoying, but also it could be a saving grace for somebody if they have gone a bit too dark. Just know it should dry lighter in a second. Now what we're going to do is mix a green. So this has a slightly bluey tinge. I'm going to pick up my dark green. I'm going to pick up a little bit of this navy blue and also a bit of the bright green because I don't have a natural green. And if you do just add a tiny bit of the blue and that should give it this lovely aqua effect. And then again, I'm just going to block color it in. There's no white really. There is a lighter bit on the stem, but when we get to that, I'm just going to add a bit more water. So keep the same base color. It does make sure everything's nice and consistent, which is good. And then that's going to give us a very nice, simple flower painting already. So let's go into this one. Again, don't worry about the detail. That's not something we're looking for right now. And hopefully by the time I've painted the leaves, I should be able to paint against or another layer on the petal because it's nice and thin. And as I said, add a bit more water to the stem. And that should just be a little bit lighter for us. Okay. So now for the petals, my yellow / a little bit of orange is also going to have a bit of yellow ochre. Then I just want to look at the color and I'm going to ask myself, is it dark enough? It's not really. It could be a little bit darker. So I'm just going to add a tiny bit of purple, which keeps the color nice and vibrant without losing too much of the brightness, but also keeps it dark. So I'm going to start with this under petal first, and then I'm going along the edge like this. And then I'm just going to quickly clean my brush, dry off the excess, and I'm going to pull that upwards. So this time pulling it upwards gives me a few more natural streaks rather than going along the edge, which I usually do. Pulling it upwards just helps it to wiggle around and goes with the natural streakiness nature of the petals. So I'm looking for pockets now, pockets of shade, because it's not going to be consistent. You have to really look and identify it. And some of the edges might be nice and crisp like this one, but some of them might be softer as well. So if I pop this one here, I've got a little shadow down the middle. And then just want to soften that edge. Now my color has become a little bit more diluted, so I'm just going to have to make a little bit more. There we go. Pop that back in there. It's really nice once you start seeing shadows on the artwork because that's when it really comes to life. So let's look at this one here. All of these at the bottom are going to have the greatest shadows. This leaf is going to need clean, dry brush to be pulled up, but you do have to work really, really quick. And I've pulled it all the way to the top, so that is slightly damp for me to go from the top and then go down. There we go. Okay. Where else do we have one? We have a little bit here. This one's a softer one. So clean, dry. This time I'll go in the direction. We do have a little bit of a shadow up here. Pull that one down. And then just in general, in the middle, it's a bit darker. It's a little bit warmer. So I'm gonna just color that one in. It's probably gone a little heavy-handed, but the brightness is there and it is actually the right color. So I'm not unhappy with it, but I probably wouldn't encourage you guys to fully throw that on there. It's quite intimidating. Whilst it's there, I'm gonna go for a little bit of a darker tone because it's wet. And then I'm just gonna dot that around the middle. Clean my brush, dry it, and then just pull that out. Okay, nice. I'm gonna let that dry slightly, and I'm gonna move down to the leaves. So I'm gonna pick this dark green, dark blue, and then I'm gonna decide which sides need a little bit of shade. The easiest one is actually gonna be this side on the right. So if I plop that on, and then we're basically showing that this leaf is folded over. That looks really nice. Same with this one. Okay. And then on the left side, it's a little bit more confusing. So I'm just going to make a decision and do 1/2 dark. Pick up some more paint. And on this side, I'm actually going to flip that to the back. Why? Maybe it's a bad idea, but I've committed now. And then let's refresh this, and we're going to go down the middle. So only on one side. Clean the brush, dry it, and then just with a slightly damp brush, I'm just going along the edge, and that just softens the blend. Okay, so let's go back to the flower now. Again, now I'm looking at it and we've added more colors. The initial base looked way too bright. So I'm picking up a yellow and then a little bit of the orange just to make it a bit more vibrant. And then I'm going to start going around the edges. So trying to look to see which colors we need to pick up. And we can leave some little streaks of the light underneath. That could look quite good. And we just add a few streaks over here. But I don't want it to be too harsh. So a slightly damp brush. Keep rinsing off the excess or just squeezing off the excess. And just going along the edge is really, really nice. So let's do that again on another leaf. This one we could maybe pull that one down. And then already I need to make a bit more paint. Yeah, nice. Okay. And then let's add some of this basically in all of the leaves. So just make sure you keep looking at each leaf and just seeing where the vibrancy can be pulled. So where can we add a brighter yellow? Where does it need to be a little bit darker? And just remember, don't use black if you go in darker because that really kills the color. So I'm just going to clean that. Pull some of those streaks down. That looks good. This one definitely needs... I hope you guys can hear the pug. It just sounds like literally a little pig. That is looking lovely. Okay, beautiful. So let that dry for a couple of minutes and then let's come back and see what else we can push. Okay, so I'm looking at it, it still looks a little bit flat and that's mostly because of the middle. So what I'm going to do is mix myself a colour. So nice and dark, but again, keeping that vibrancy. So this time I'm adding a bit more red, and then let's see what that looks like on top of this. Now already I'm feeling that that is quite a good pairing actually, using a red on top of the purpley mix underneath. And I basically just want to try and do the same thing as before. So adding the color, just cleaning that, and then just stroking that up. Pick up some more color, especially in contrast to here. Let's do that again. Just make a little bit more paint. Good. And then one little bit here. And then obviously the edges, they do have a little bit of color changes, so make sure we add those in on the outer edges where they're needed, so definitely keep looking. It's too easy to get in the flow and then you look and you're like, oh no, that actually doesn't have that there. Okay, good. And then I'm going to go in with a purpley red, a little bit of orange still. That's really dark, that's great. And then I'm just going to add a few shapes in the middle. Clean the brush. And then basically just smudge it. So you're kind of, let's smudge from top to bottom. Maybe a couple of streaks. Yeah, just be a little bit careful there. It gives it something, but it's not quite enough, so let's just scumble that in. Oh, that's way better. And then a slightly redder one for the edge. So it's almost like an outline, but not quite. Just going to soften the paint, a little bit more water. And then you see that the top half actually is a little bit darker than the bottom half. The bottom half is more yellow. So in that case, just going to pick up some more yellow. Okay, good. We could go a tiny bit darker on here, but that's going to depend on your painting. So you're going to be the one to decide, okay, does it need to go darker or am I okay with it? And I love pushing contrast. So making sure we're seeing that there is a shadow cast from the top to the bottom is super, super important. And already just by making these little marks, I think it looks 10 times better. Just adding that dark contrast on there. So make sure when you're doing yours, you're looking at it objectively rather than emotionally. And I say that because it is really emotional to push something darker when it doesn't feel appropriate to do that. So just be brave. So there we have the daffodil. I hope you enjoyed that class. For me, it was really, really fun to paint. And I can't wait to see what you've done. So make sure you share your images in the chat and I'll see you in the next video.